Today, Todd and Julie Chrisley were sentenced to a combined 19 years in prison in 2022. The couple was found guilty on federal charges of conspiracy to commit bank fraud, wire fraud, and tax evasion. Todd recently opened up about his most important prayer during his imprisonment. Keep reading to find out more. Todd and Julie Chrisley reported to their respective facilities in January 2023 to serve out their sentence for fraud and tax evasion. Despite their imprisonment, the couple's daughter, Savannah, lobbied tirelessly to get her parents released from prison. In an unprecedented turn of events, Todd and Julie were issued a presidential pardon in May, after serving only 2.5 years of their sentences. In addition, they were freed from prison one day after their pardon. Coming home on May 28, 2025, Todd and Julie Chrisley have officially restarted their podcast, Chrisley Confessions 2.0. The couple is back behind the mic 2 months after their release from prison. On their podcast, they discuss their experiences over the last several years. During a recent episode, Todd disclosed what he prayed for while he was in prison. Todd told his wife Julie, "My prayer with God every day, every night, and all through the day was if he would just get you home. If he could just get you home with our kids, then I could do the rest of what I have to do. Because I would have that level of peace knowing that you were back in charge, that you were taking care of the things that I knew you would take care of." On their podcast, Chrisley Confessions 2.0, Todd Chrisley told his wife Julie that he prayed daily for her release. He wanted his wife to be able to go home and take care of their children and their home life. In addition, Todd shared how surreal it was for him and Julie to be released from prison on the same day. Julie said she felt similarly. She opened up and said, "I still have those moments. I'm not going to lie. I still have those moments when I'm like, did this really happen? You know, I'm like, that chapter is behind us, completely behind us. And I have to pinch myself sometimes because I'm like, this can't be. I can't believe this has actually happened." Todd Chrisley echoed his wife's sentiments. In addition, he shared that he has been talking with friends about how strange it is to be home from prison. However, Chrisley attributed their good fortune to God. He said he felt the moments of surrealism where God winks. Todd went on to explain, "There is so much power in prayer. But the most amazing thing that has ever happened to me is physically witnessing things that I prayed for actually occurring." Todd and Julie Chrisley attribute their good fortune to God. To find out more about the Chrisleys' life in prison and what they are up to now, check out their podcast, Chrisley Confessions 2.0. Lights dimmed. A hush fell over the room. While cameras weren't rolling, the air felt electric, like for once, we were seeing behind the curtain. It was one of those rare, soul-laid-bare moments from Todd Chrisley, the patriarch of Chrisley Knows Best, whose flair for drama, velvet southern drawl, and reality TV bravado made him unforgettable. But here was something even bigger than televised one-liners or opulent family drama. A glimpse into the prayer he leaned on when the world felt like it was crumbling one. From helicopter dad to desperate faith to understand the weight of that prayer, you have to go back to January 2023. Todd and Julie Chrisley reported to prison after being convicted of fraud and tax evasion. Their combined sentence? A staggering 19 years behind bars. Chrisley Knows Best may have been over, but their real-life story had barely begun. In conversations on their Chrisley Confessions podcast, Todd let his guard down. He shared how, facing sentencing, prayer became their lifeline. Fans brought gifts, flowers, messages. But when Julie asked people on the podcast what they needed most, Todd's answer was simple and heartfelt: prayer. Behind that tough facade, Todd admitted being closer to God than I've ever been, describing how he found himself screaming out to God as he endured life unraveling. It wasn't a moment of vanity, it was raw vulnerability too. The darkness of downtown night, when the prison lights went out and silence overtook everything, Todd confessed he cried himself to sleep. Anger and confusion settled in. "God, why are you allowing this?" he asked, wrestling with his faith. a seed of doubt sprouted in that darkness. This was not a level-headed, prearranged confession for TV. This was a man confronting his deepest pain, unable to rationalize how his life had taken this turn. 3. A prayer for home and peace. Then came the moment of clarity. In conversations afterward, Todd described the prayer that anchored his heart throughout those long nights. He prayed simply, fiercely, nightly for Julie to return home with their children. Not for fame, not for redemption or vindication. For the peace that comes when your loved ones are safe and you know your world still holds meaning. He said those words with intention. If he would just get you home, with our kids, then I could do the rest. That prayer wasn't wishful thinking. It was a declaration of trust in something bigger than his own power, even as confinement tested everything he built for. Divine timing, surreal reality. Then came the pardon. In May 2025, after roughly 2.5 years behind bars, Todd and Julie were unexpectedly granted full clemency by President Donald Trump. Todd later described how, while walking in the prison compound, an inmate stopped him with news, followed by a corrections officer asking, "Are you okay?" That's when the realization hit. He had been pardoned. There was relief, confusion, disbelief. A surreal blend of grace and vindication. "I owe thanks to God," he said. God touched President Trump's heart. Every night, I would pray that God would return me home to my wife and my children. And he did that. Showbiz cheat sheet. FoxWilmington.com. Decider. 5. A faith reshaped by Chrisley. That prayer wasn't just answered. It transformed him. Todd spoke of seeing that moment as a God wink, a sign that faith really does move beyond cliches. CashShowSays.com. The surreal nature of waking up reunited with his daughter, Savannah, or having a shower after prison, with jokes comparing it to a romantic encounter, all felt surreal, like déjà vu. New York Post. But once home, Todd's resolve shifted. He stopped praying solely for himself and began looking outward. The justice system had tested his faith, but it also sparked a desire to fight for others. Todd vowed to expose injustice and advocate reform. News Press Now, KSBW. Moving forward, the Chrisleys hope to help other incarcerated individuals, especially women, and work on policy reform. 6. Homeward Reflections now return to normalcy, or as close as new reality stars can be. Todd and Julie are rebuilding. They've relaunched Chrisley Confessions 2.0. They're working on new projects, including a Lifetime show, and the family is trying to cherish the simple daily routines they once took for granted. Decider, People.com, The Guardian. Julie said it still feels unreal. Todd nods. How can you trust the ground beneath you again when your world once dissolved overnight? Yet he stands firm, anchored by that prayer. For Julie, for their kids, for coming home. That was the prayer that saved him, that gave him purpose beyond fame, beyond fighting for his own freedom. Final act. The power of one night. One prayer in pop culture. Todd Chrisley will always be remembered for his flamboyant style, razor-sharp wit, and dramatic family dynamics. But the most powerful scene he's ever shared wasn't scripted. It was the midnight hour, alone in a prison cell, whispering a simple prayer. Bring her home. Lights dimmed on the plush, charmed world of the Chrisleys. A hush fell across expansive living rooms, gold-plated mirrors, and designer couches. That world where Todd Chrisley's southern bravado and generous flair once reigned supreme. Then came the verdict, the sentence, and a descent from glamorous reality to stark reality. But even in that descent, one slender thread kept him tethered. Picture those bright studio lights fading, the cameras sitting idle. Todd, once the patriarch with a booming laugh and big plans, was whisked away from red carpets and familial sitcom comfort. Confinement arrived not as a Hollywood plot twist, but a cold sentence, 19 years for fraud and tax evasion. Gone were the orchestrated family squabbles. The chaos was replaced by routine roll calls, locked doors, and solitude. He was now arsing in a different story, one without scriptwriters or fan applause. Yet, everyone who knew Todd understands it wasn't the first time he rallied. But this was uncharted. Not a scheme to dodge Julie's notices or Savannah's plans. Now the spotlight was absent. All that remained was his faith, tested and fragile in a cell with a steel door. In darkness, things tend to weigh heavier. The glow from hallway lights offered pallid consolation at best. Nights stretched long. Thoughts ricocheted. Regret, fear, the echo of life once lived. The southern charm faded into the silence. All facades stripped away, there remained just the man under judgment. The days weren't loud. They weren't colorful. They were routine and raw. The usual trappings of power, luxury, family, reputation, weren't as distant as they were suffocated. The question went deeper now. Not how to maintain control, but how to survive belief, hope, identity. In those silent hours, prayer bloomed like a candle in the night. The unspoken act, a guttural reaching, became the lifeline. But what weighs on a man when the world collapses around him?